Hello and welcome to the series of videos where we're going to be making a 2D platformer in Unity 3D. It's going to be a side-scroller game. And basically what's going to happen is that I'm going to do this in a more educational way where I go from beginning to end and everything will be on screen and you can follow along, and it's going to be fairly straightforward, but there will be some things that we're going to have to talk about in more detail because it's educational purposes. It's not just to learn to make a game, it's to learn a little bit about coding and coding constructs and that sort of thing. So hopefully you enjoy this. Make sure that you have Unity installed. We'll talk about that in a minute. And make sure you have a pen and paper and let's say something like PowerPoint available to you. Even if it's just a piece of paper and a pencil, that will do. Also, I want to let you know, these are not regular glasses. These are blue light glasses. And if you are spending a lot of time on the computer, it'll be good to wear something like this to prevent that, to protect your eyes. Let's put it that way. And if you need any blue light glasses, I would suggest going on Amazon. This is not an endorsement or anything, but I do realize that I have a lot of videos up here and I show a lot of people how to work on the computer. I have other stuff that I show people also, but when I'm doing stuff on a computer, there is computer health that's required that you should do if you're going to spend so much time on the computer programming or making games or whatever you're doing, homework. And there's eye health, there's hand health, there's even getting up and exercising and stretching and relaxing, taking breaks, those sort of things, you know. So this is one of those things. If I were you and you are a student and you're spending a lot of time on the computer, I would suggest getting some of these. There's no prescription involved in it. It's just protecting your eyes from the blue light, or protecting your light from your eyes. You see, I was going to say that, but that would have been a mistake. In any case, let's get started on this. So when you think of side-scroller games, you know, a lot of times you will think 2D, but as you can see here, we have sort of a 2.5D side-scroller game where it's partial 2D, partial 3D, characters moving around. And this also is a side-scroller game because the camera is locked to a particular position and the character can jump on things and go through these different levels, but never really going into the three-dimensional realm. But traditionally, when you think of side-scroller games, you think of something like this, something like Castlevania. There's an old game called Dig Dug where this game actually resembles a little bit. So that's when you think of side-scroller games, or something like what you're looking at right here, where it's 2D characters animated to look like they're running or to look like they're jumping and that sort of stuff. And we'll be dealing with that in our game to go from one level to the next, as you can see in this one, using abilities. We probably won't be doing that in this video. I'm just going to show you all the basics on how to do a lot of this stuff and get that camera moving left and right and getting your character to be able to maybe collect some coins and jump and that sort of thing. And you're looking at Little Big Planet. And Little Big Planet is a 3D side-scroller game. So it's in a 3D world, but the camera's strapped to the side-scroller position. You know, it's positioned that way, and it doesn't move from that. And maybe some special occasions it might move closer or move around or something like that. But basically, it's a side-scroller game, and it's all 3D. So when you think side-scroller, don't just think 2D. It's basically the camera position, which makes it a side-scroller game because there's no other way. Then when you think side-scroller games, you can also think of something like this. Like, number one, the story. Number two, it is the abilities. Number three, it is the challenges that you can face and the competition, basically, of collecting more coins, that sort of stuff. So there's all kinds of things you can put in your side-scroller that makes it very fun, and that's going to be the key factor in your side-scroller. The question is it fun? Because if it's not fun, then there's no point in you making it. And so I will always keep that in mind when you're making your side scroller. So the next thing we want to now do is go to our documentation. We know we're going to make a side scroller. We talked about that because the video is based on that. But when we actually start, we don't know we're going to make a game. When we actually start, we want to actually start with the story. So just so you can know what we're making, that's fine. But here's the actual start of what we're supposed to be doing when we make some sort of product. We take it from something that's substantive. That way we can have something that lasts a lot longer and it's more, I would say, capable of being improved upon or growing or lasting for a lot longer than you expect. So the first thing we're going to need is to write our story. So we're going to write a very quick story here. We're going to just put this as the story. Let me change this up. So this is going to be our story. All right, so let's do a story about a jailbreak. Yeah. Yeah, let's do a story about a jailbreak. Now, I might not have room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this whole setup here. I'm going to remove this here. I'm going to go here to insert, and I'm going to insert a shape. We'll drag that here like this. I'm going to type something in there just so I can see my words. I'm going to highlight these words, go here to home, and I'm going to left justify all of this here. And actually, I don't need to even highlight the words. I just click on the shape. I can left justify that. I can make columns. I can make the size of the line spacing, and then I'll have it there. Now I can go ahead and start writing my story in this. So I'm going to go ahead and put the story. Let's say we said something about a jailbreak, so let's keep it creative. Let's say amid a chaotic thunderstorm, the prison's lights, flickered. And the alarms wailed. But yeah, that's good. They wailed a symphony. Okay, I'm trying to be creative here, but I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video, and I'm gonna write the rest of this, and then I'm gonna come right back because I don't want you to have to sit through this part. But write your own story, and then let's come back to this. Okay, so here's what we have. Amid a chaotic thunderstorm, the prison's lights flickered, and alarms wailed a symphony to the trio of inmates whose hearts pounding slipped through the wall they had secretly chiseled away. They sprinted through the muddy grounds, the taste of freedom potent as the rain that lashed against their determined faces. Just as the sirens grew distant, they stumbled upon an unexpected ally, an old shepherd, who, mistaking them as lost travelers, sheltered them in his hidden cottage. Years later, only the shepherd's knowing eyes would betray the truth, a silent, shared secret beneath the tranquility of his flock and fields. So that's our story. So now we can go from our story and pull something from this to make which is the next step, is to how to transcend this idea from story to something. And even though we know we're making a game, we want to take each thing that we're doing and not think about anything else. So when you're writing the story, you simply write the story. Don't think you're writing the story for a game. And then you can move on to the next level. If anybody at this point in your team is talking about anything other than the story, you have to reel them back in, say, no, let's focus on the story. Let's make this a great story. And this is a video, so I'm not going to make the story long, but you get the idea. Focus, put the story hat on, and only focus on the story here. Now we move to the next stage. So the next stage is we're going to have to manifest this story into something, like I said before. So I'm just going to duplicate this, hitting Control D, which duplicates the slide. And I'm going to go up in here, and I'm going to put what I can manifest my story into. Okay, so I can choose something. So let's say if I was going to manifest this into apparel, that would be one thing, right? What about a movie? That would be something else, even music. I can decide to make this out of a song or take from that and make a song out of it. I can decide to make a game, even though we know we're making a game, but you get the idea. Utilities for something. Perhaps even some costumes. I mean, and the list goes on and on. You're just making a list of things that in your mind of all those things based on what you can create in reality, manifesting something from your story to real life. Now, keep in mind, when we did the story, that's all we were focusing on. Now we say we want to pull something from our story. We decided it to be a game, right? So we're going to pull a game. But maybe in the future, you might pull costumes. Maybe you might pull music or a movie or, a show or an animation or whatever, a watch, a shirt, a t-shirt, a hat. It could be anything, right? And so we're deciding to pull a game, but that's why we wanted to make our story stand alone, because perhaps it's just a story. Perhaps also, it's a book, right? Perhaps it's a comic book. But that's why you make the story stand on its own, so that way, whatever it is, there's always source material people can go by. And by the way, the story doesn't have to be long. This could be it, right? Go look at the story for, like, Frogger or some other game. Castlevania, go look at that. I mean, there's probably more than this, obviously. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times we play games, we do things, we wear shirts, we wear clothing, we don't even know the story behind it. But we do know it's good. And we do know it's quality. And that's the main thing. That's where quality comes from. Quality comes from a well-grounded story. And the person playing the game may not even need to know the story. The person listening to the music doesn't even need to know the backstory. They don't need to. Wearing the apparel, as long as it looks good, right? And so that's the idea here. So since we know we're going to make the game, we can go ahead and move on to the next step. And the next step is we're going to choose the genre of our game. So I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to go to this next slide, and I'm going to highlight that and delete that. And let's talk about the genre of our game. And we can say it's going to be a real game, like a board game, let's say. It can be a virtual game, like virtual reality or something like that. It could be augmented. Right, so it can augment reality. It can be augmented reality. It can be a written game. That's a game that we can do. Even a spoken word game. There used to be these games in books where you would read the book and it would say go to page 3, and then you'd make your decisions that way. We can be a 2D game. It can be a 3D game, and we can keep on going down this list of types of games. There's all kinds of games, right? It could be a psychological game, a spoken word game. It could be all kinds of games. However, we chose to do not 3D. We chose to do a 2D game. Since we know it's going to be a 2D game, it'd be wise for us to go over our overview, sort of draw an example of how we see our game based on our story. And this is also a good idea to pull the element out of your story for your game. So it's basically going to be a jailbreak. We know that. So maybe perhaps the level has to do in a jail or a cave, or maybe when they broke out, they ended up in some other dimension. That would be pretty cool. Maybe that can happen, because that still goes with this here, right? Maybe that shepherd was in another dimension, so I can add on to this. Maybe it's like a Twilight Zone-y thing happening there. All kinds of stuff you can add to that. So that's what we want to do next. So to do that, I'm going to make another here. I'm going to actually delete this. And I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete all of this stuff here. And I'm going to leave that there. And now I'm going to go to shape. So I am going to create my level. So here is my background. I can change that up, something like that. And then I can just basically draw my level out. I'm not using my pad. It would be a lot easier. I'm using my mouse, so you get the idea here. I'm just drawing up a level here. Let's see. There's some high-tech stuff going on. And, you want to draw your level out. And a lot of times what I like to do, I like to draw it almost like if I was making a tile map. So I want to make sure everything is sort of blocked off, as if each one of these are tiles. And we'll talk about tile maps in a second. So just getting an idea of maybe how the jailbreak level would look when they first come out. And I'm just going to do something like this. And that's going to be like lava or something. Right? So, that's ugly. Hold on. So that's going to be like hazards. And hitting Control D. This is going to be the start. And then maybe there's some enemies here. I'm going to draw some enemy. Oh, sorry, some enemies. So let's go to the next level and let's see how we can somewhat achieve that. I'm hitting Control D to duplicate that slide. And now I can start off here. I'm going to just delete a lot of this to remember when it comes to our game. And I'm going to go here. It's not really remember. It's basically game design, okay? This is the game design here. Although we do want them to remember it, right? So we're going to come here. I'm going to do this game design here. What's the first thing I want to do? Is player experience. That's going to be the main thing. It's like the player experience. We want them to have fun. We do know that. And, oops. There we go. Messed up on the spelling. All right, so let me fix this here. Push this to the left. All right, so I want it to be where they're under pressure. Right? So maybe there's a timer. Maybe there's a timer. Let me make this have more space here. The idea of going from start to finish. Navigate the platforms. And you got to avoid platforms, navigate the platforms, and avoid the traps. Also the enemies, right? So you're gonna, this is the basic structure of our game. And let's talk about some of the mechanics. That we intend on putting in the game. It may not be there, but we'll talk about some of the mechanics. And basic run / jump. And maybe, I don't know if they would have a gun. Maybe they still one from the guards. Maybe a gun. And if we go the route of it being in another dimension, you know, even though they broke out of the jail, then maybe there could be some kind of magic that's not really apparent initially, and then later on. And this is why they're jumping from one level. And if we do that, then they can jump from one level to the next, but each level is different. Like it's another world or something like that. All right, so there we got our basic game design there. We got our core mechanics there. And then so we'll move on from here. But before we move on, let's also put the theme down here. Let me make some space. The theme of this is escape. And fight. All right, so let's talk about the MVP, and I don't mean most valuable player. It's the minimum viable product is what we're talking about here. So the most minimal thing your game needs in order for it to work, and we already know basically based on this. We know we need character movement. We know we need traps and hazards. We know we need to finish the game, so it needs to load and change the level, and also we need to have the timer. They can shoot something. I don't know. If they get a weapon, let's say. We also want traps and obstacles. So we want traps and obstacles. Some of them can Some of them can insta-kill. When you touch it, you're done. All right. Let's see. Level loading. Right? Level loading into the next level and timer. And these are our minimum to just say we have a game. This is our minimum, 4 things. Let me capitalize that. So, you know, as we go through this, you can see how your team basically knows what they need to do from here to here to here. You can say, okay, you go make the levels or make the timer, whatever, based on this. And then we see the main things that our game is supposed to have. And then we see the minimum viable product here in the character movement, the jump, the shoot, the traps. And you can divvy this stuff out when it comes to a team if everyone's willing to do something, especially finding assets or writing the code, that sort of stuff. And also here, we want to point out what we'll be using at this point, right? Even at this point, we want to talk about what we'll be using. So because here we already knew we were doing Unity, we do want to state that in this area here that we'll be using Unity and we're using C#. But if you're using Unity, you're using C#, and you're also using Visual Studio, right? So that goes without saying. For the art stuff, you might be using Photoshop, you might be using something else. You want to list all that stuff at that point once you've decided you are making a 2D game. So that leads us into the other part of this, is we want to search for our assets. So you're gonna find assets from everywhere, right? So you can get them online, you get them on YouTube, you can make your assets, depending on how you want to push forward with your game. Sometimes you might want to use prototype assets or not even assets at all. You just want to make the level, you want to block out the level, make it work. I would suggest doing that. That's the more professional way to do it. But, you know, right now we want to just get through this process to have something working as a game from this sort of documentation component, story documentation, to actually making a game. So go ahead and find your assets, and that's basically what we're going to do for our game. What I want to be able to explain is a little bit about tile mapping. And this is, we are going to be using tile maps because we are making a 2D game inside of Unity, right? So there's a pipeline to these tile maps. And basically it starts off with a sheet, right? So let me insert shape, and I'm going to insert this arrow, which is the direction that this whole process goes. So let's say if let me look online and see if I can find a tile map. Let me just find any image of a tile map. Okay, here we go. Actually, this is a good example here. All right. This is a good example of a tile map. And this is how we're going to be making our levels and everything inside of Unity. So when you see something like, let me find a level so that makes more sense. Okay, so when you find something like this, each part of this, you see these little squares, represents a tile map. So literally what it is here, I'm going to highlight this, and that's one. So if I took that, right, and I just sort of duplicated this over and over again, you'll see how I'm making this layer, right, this level. And this is how a lot of 2D games are made, the majority of them, when it comes to making 2D games in a 3D engine, or 2D games, period. You know, whether you're coding it yourself, you're making these sort of tile maps. So you have an edge tile map, you have the top tile map, anything like that. For instance, this part right here would be the map for the top, right? So I can take that and then I will place it right here, and I would do it over and over again. And that's how we would create our maps. And that's how this was created with tile maps. They take different parts of it and they make that centerpiece here. For instance, they would have taken this right here as one, and they would have taken this over here as another, and they can put these together like this, you see, to make that center part there. And then the obvious the top part of the tile map would be there, and you can change things up if you want, obviously. Maybe that's below that. You see, this is crude, but you see the idea here. So you'll have a tile map that looks like this. It's different parts that you can put together to make an entire level, change it up, and make complete different levels with the same tiles, and it saves memory. That's the whole reason why tile maps were created, is because it actually allows you to do a lot with very little memory. But in Unity, it's a lot easier for us to do this. We wouldn't be placing the tile maps like this. We'll be painting the tile map. So we'll select the tile map, and we'll be painting it right, just like dragging our mouse across while it paints the tile map. And there's smart ways to do it and rudimentary ways to do it, but we just want to know the overall process, and that's what we're going to get into next. This video is all about the documentation and the story and what we're planning to do. And in the next video, we're going to go ahead and start making our game. Because once you start learning this process, you're doing it in a more professional way. You're doing it with something that can actually make you a lot of money, or make you excited about what you're doing, whether it's money, whether it is making a good product, or whether it's making stories. And the reason why I say money, because you can always go back to your original story and monetize it. You can sell it, or you can just have fun with it and create new things from it, expand on it over time. As long as you have a story, a solid story that you like, and you're the first fan of your story, then it can move on. Just understand one thing when it comes to stories and development. When you have a story, remember, the story, even though you wrote it, belongs to the fans. It doesn't belong to the creator. Just remember that. And so you, as the first fan, has a lot of say into that story. So you always want to write stories that you like. And I'm guilty of writing stories I don't like. So that was way in the beginning when I didn't understand this concept. So you want to write stories that you like. You want to write stories that you can pull from, and you want to write stories that actually is going to last. That's why you sit when you're writing the story. That's why that's the only thing you're focusing on. You're not focusing on a game. You're not focusing on anything that you're going to do. You're not even focusing on whether the story can be made into something. You're focusing on a good story. You're focusing on that is entertaining to you, that you like it, that it's fun, whatever it's supposed to do, whatever feeling it's supposed to induce in the person or people or your audience that you're going for. And then later on, then you go ahead and then you start this process like what we did in this video. We went right on to, after the story, we went on to manifesting the game type, or the game itself, because we decided we were going to make a game. We went on to say we were going to do 2D, Unity, Visual Studio. We went on to then do the levels and the game design, which included this part right here. We went on to the minimum viable product, and then we talked about tile maps to give us a little bit of understanding what we're going to do. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye.